Hi, this is Chris of Target Test Prep. Today's video is super important. In fact, if I had to recommend just one of the many important videos here at TTP, I would put this top of the list. Why? Because it's so important to your overall GRE prep. In fact, right now, you could be doing one, if not more, of the 4 following things you should not be doing, or the 4 biggest myths around the GRE. Are you doing one of them or more? Let's see. First off, think of it this way. You are prepping for this important test. You hear all of these different forms of information and from all of these different areas or sources, and it can become overwhelming. You're not sure what to trust, but you go with your gut and you forge ahead. What we're going to do in this video is go through each of the 4 myths and see how they can be affecting and impacting, oftentimes negatively, your GRE prep. Starting with the first one, which is the GRE score. Your GRE score is the make it or break it in graduate school admissions. So think of it this way. If you are on a committee looking at an applicant to your program in graduate school, and you see this stellar GRE score, let's call it a perfect score, and then you look to the side at their other aspects of their application, you say, these other recommendations, we asked for 3, they only gave 2, and this kind of looks like their friend wrote it. All of a sudden, they're going to forget that 170 perfect score. Or if your GPA is 2.5 or lower, all of these things essentially matter. Your extracurriculars, your relevant work experience, they're looking at that, and the GRE is just part of that overall package. And so it's very important to keep that in mind. Do not think that this is going to be the make it or break it factor for you. Myth number 2. This one is really prevalent. It's the idea that the GRE is a test of intelligence, of innate skill. You simply can't get better at something that is something you're born with. Now, I want you to imagine 2, again, hypothetical students. One of them reads this and believes, yeah, that's kind of the case, right? Let me take a practice test. And they've told themselves that they are just not a math person. And yeah, sure enough, they do terribly on the math. And they said, of course, I mean, some people are good at things, other people aren't. I'm going to go work on maybe other parts of my application, on my essay, which is great. You can definitely do that as we talked about in the first myth. Or maybe that person just says, I don't know. It's just not worth it taking the GRE at all. I'm not even going to work on my application. I'm just not even going to apply to grad school. In either case, that is not the right reaction to have. Because the test, the GRE, is very much a test of skill. It isn't to say that everyone can get a perfect score. That's obviously not the case. But just because you started at, let's say, a 290, doesn't mean that that is like stamped into your resume, or it was something that was determined at birth. This is a 290 scorer. Welcome to the world. Rather, it is a starting point upon which you can grow. Just how far you can grow is up to you to an extent, but it's also up to making sure that you don't follow some of these other myths that we'll get to in the moment. Of course, that you have good study habits, but here this myth is around that mental attitude, that you can indeed improve on this test. It is not a test of innate intelligence. So if you have these narratives, these myths about yourself that are holding you back, such as, I'm just not a math person, which I've had so many students tell me, then you need to undo that myth, because that is indeed holding you back and it is untrue. How do I know? Just a second ago I said I've had many students. I've had students come in saying, I'm just bad at math, and we work at it and we keep working at it. And even as they're getting better, they'll say, oh yeah, I guess I got that one right, but I'm still bad at math. And at the end they go from, like 144 to like 159, and it's like a 15-point increase. It's massive. And they sometimes end up saying, yeah, but I'm still not a math person. But the point is, you can definitely improve a lot in either quant or verbal, as long as you do away with that pernicious or harmful myth that the GRE tests innate intelligence and there's nothing you can do about your score. Myth number 3, all you need to do is study for a few hundred hours. Why is this a myth? Because it's not how much you study, it's how you study. Yet many people labor under this delusion that they will do 1,000 practice questions, going back to myth number 2, memorize 3,000 vocabulary words, and as long as they do that and reach that finish line, they will get the score that they needed. That is very much incorrect. We want to use targeted study habits, efficient and effective study habits that don't necessarily translate to hundreds upon hundreds of hours and months upon months of prep time, though they can, of course, take at least a month or even more, but instead of taking 3 or 4 months, now you're taking 6 weeks because you're knowing how to study. You're using the idea of taking practice tests, rigorously analyzing your wrong answer choices, making sure that you're not just memorizing the answer choices in the back of some book, but that you're actually internalizing them. These are all helpful study habits that make a much bigger difference than just the raw number of hours that you study. And finally, myth number 4, as I've teased throughout, it's the idea, yes, of vocabulary words, that memorizing thousands of vocabulary words, spending hundreds of hours trying to attain that perfect score, on verbal section at least, that is the secret to doing well on the verbal section. It's simply not. It is a foundation which sets you up for success on the GRE verbal section, but it is just the first step. The GRE verbal section, what it's actually testing is your ability to analytically, logically reason through dense texts, to be able to actually understand what those texts are saying, and they intentionally make them really long and complicated. That is the skill they're testing out here. So if you get it to the end of this really long paragraph, you had no idea what it meant, but you look at the 5 vocabulary words and you say, oh wow, I memorized all of them. It doesn't matter. Of course, again, if you practice, or if you don't practice any vocabulary and you understand all of the passage, then you're still guessing essentially from those 5 vocabulary words. So it is a balance between memorizing vocab, but in the context of understanding how that vocabulary is actually used. And so what you're doing is you're improving your, I'm going to call it your reading brain. And your reading brain isn't just reading some relaxing magazine that you might enjoy, but really tackling the kind of text that you're going to see on the GRE. Things that you might see in the New Yorker, the New York Times, the Economist, the Atlantic. These are just publications that have dense text and love to use GRE vocabulary. And it's by reading this kind of level that your reading brain is going to improve. That is going to help you navigate those twists and turns of that passage. So once you get that part down, that's going to make a huge difference to your GRE verbal score. And then finally, another part to GRE verbal score is really analyzing the differences between the wrong answer choices, and it's that wrong answer that's almost right but not quite, and the one that's actually correct. That is also an important skill that isn't just based on vocabulary. So remember, vocabulary is part, but not all, by no means all, of verbal success on the GRE. And there you have it. These are the 4 myths that if you are subscribing to even just one of them, it can really be holding you back. So remember, we're going to go through them really quickly. The GRE is not the make it or break it. So make sure you're also focusing on other aspects of your application, but know that the test is important. And then with that in mind, know that you can't have these negative narratives, that the test is actually something that you can improve on. Next, you can't just study hundreds and hundreds of hours. You have to follow an effective way of studying and using effective learning and prepping techniques. And then finally, as I just mentioned, it's the vocabulary aspect. Don't feel that memorizing 3,000 words is going to get you that vocab, or that is going to get you that verbal score you need. You need to also improve or grow that reading brain and be really good at navigating those trickily and craftily crafted answer choices. And with that, I'm Chris of Target Test Prep. Do not forget to check out some of the other exciting videos that we have here in the description below, as well as don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because you're going to have access to all of these videos that are really going to set you up for success, and going back to that one myth, save you a lot of time and get you a much better score. I'll see you next time.